Slim says, what? It's like 6 spokes on a wheel. If I explain it like that, it's going to be confusing. Huh? It'll be way more confusing if I don't? Okay, yep. Spokes on a wheel it is. Okay, cool. April 8th, 1944. Already in October 1941, the Germans began their campaign to take the Crimea, which ended in July 1942 when they finally took Sevastopol. They have held it for the past 21 months, even though for much of the last year, the whole Ukraine to the north was retaken from them by the Soviets. The Red Army has not attacked the Crimea in force yet. This week, they do. I'm Indy Neidell. This is World War II. Last week, Mikołaj Uchman, commander of Japan's combined fleet, met his fate. There were Allied raids against the Caroline Islands. In India, the Japanese were pushing towards Imphal and Kohima. In Burma, Merrill's marauders were under siege. A shakeup in German high command saw army groups on the Eastern Front get new commanders, and a panzer army was surrounded in Ukraine. 1st Panzer Army, though surrounded, is slowly moving westward as a group like a big amoeba. On the 2nd, 1st Ukrainian Front Commander Georgy Zhukov calls on the Panzer Army to surrender before the end of the day. Failure to do so would result in the army's destruction, as well as all of its officers shot in front of the men as punishment. Well, active fighting is suspended by blizzards, but when things clear up the 3rd, Zhukov sends in a lot of force, but the Germans manage to push back 2 tank corps and push through Chortkov. 1st Panzer Army Commander Hans-Valentin Hube thinks that the worst has passed and his army will be able to break out to the west, especially now that 2nd Panzer Corps has arrived from Poland to help out. The morning of the 5th, the Corps attacks the outside of the pocket. On the 6th, the spearheads of 2nd Panzer Corps and units of 1st Panzer Army meet at Buchach on the Stripa River. By the end of the week, it's pretty obvious breakout is going to happen, which, spoiler, it does by the 10th, with 1st Panzer Army with its front behind the river Seret. Down by the Black Sea, German 6th and 8th armies have been pulling back from the river Bug since March 28th. By this week on the 2nd, 6 armies left is at the line they've been ordered to hold around Odessa. The Soviets plan to cut this bridgehead in half between Odessa and Tiraspol. Well, these guys all get some serious weather as well. A big storm blows down here from the Carpathians and sends temperatures far below freezing. The 3rd, with an ice storm raging, Rodion Malinovsky's 3rd Ukrainian Front attacks anyhow and breaks through to Razdelnaya, cutting the railway from Odessa. Then over the next few days, they continue that penetration behind Odessa to the Dniester River and taking Belyakva. 6th Army then began a hasty retreat behind the river amid scenes of wildest confusion. At the railroad bridge and road bridge west of Tiraspol, traffic had been jammed up for weeks. The army had built 5 smaller bridges at various points, and on the muddy approaches to each, miles-long columns of trucks, people, and cattle stood 4 and 5 abreast waiting to cross. Hundreds of trains jammed into Odessa, but only a few could be routed through to the west. As for 8th Army, they're also on the move, just keeping up with the advancing Soviet troops. On the 2nd, the Red Army enters Romania, crossing the Prut east of Chernovitsi. The Romanian forces in 8th Army did not want to make a stand here. They do agree, though, to try to hold the line between Tergonamch and Iași, but there is talk of them pulling back to between the Danube and the Carpathians. Now, in this whole area west of the Dniester, Army Group South Ukraine, which was formerly Army Group A, is making as much use of its Romanian formations as it can. There's now a complicated chain of command, which actually subjugates Romanian 4th Army to 8th Army and Romanian 3rd Army to 6th Army. Romanian leader Ion Antonescu says this is cool with him. Well, his survival is at stake, but the men really are only interested in their own survival. German 8th Army Commander Otto Wöhler met last week with Romanian 4th Army Commander Ioan Racovița and came away with the impression that the Romanians just have no desire anymore to fight. You know, there have even been talks lately between the Soviets and the Romanian opposition about the future, and Soviet Foreign Minister Vyacheslav Molotov publicly declares that while the Soviets claim Bessarabia and northern Bukovina, they do not plan on annexing Romanian territory. They do plan, however, on taking back the Crimea, and Fyodor Tolbukin's 4th Ukrainian Front begins trying to do so today on the 8th, with far more force than Erwin Janicke's German 17th Army. Hello? Hello? Can you hear me? I hope you can hear me. I don't think I have much time. I think they're onto me. But I had to tell as many people as I can. It's happening. It is on June 6, D-Day, Operation Neptune, the cross-channel invasion to liberate Europe. It's happening. And the D-Day channel, D-Day 24 Hours, is now live. It's up on YouTube. It's live. And you can go there and you can subscribe and you can push the notification thing, because before the 6th of June, there's going to be some trailers and teasers and other information. But then on the 6th of June, 24 hours of content is going to drop. 24 hours covering Operation Neptune in a way it's never been covered before. I gotta go, but tell everyone. Hitler insisted that Janicke's forces stay put in the Crimea all winter long, against the wishes of his high command, including Janicke, who wanted to get them out of there. In fact, by now they've actually been beefed up in numbers, now 5 German infantry divisions strong, with 2 self-propelled assault gun brigades. They also have their 7 Romanian divisions, which you better believe Antonescu would very much like to bring home. This army has kept the Soviet presence to 2 very small beachheads, one at the eastern tip of the Kerch Peninsula and the other at Crimea's southeastern tip. The main Axis defense line is across the Perekop Isthmus. Should they lose this, then the only other place to really hole up would be Sevastopol. They do have a line around Simferopol, but it's really only to fight a rearguard action, just in case. Ferdinand Schörner commands Army Group South Ukraine, and this week he inspects the Axis defenses here, and here's a quote that I like about that. On the 7th of April 1944, Schörner inspected the Crimea defenses, pronounced them in excellent shape, and in reporting that the peninsula could be held for a long time, made one of the least accurate predictions of the war. Yeah, because today the Soviets attack. The line holds, just, but the Romanian 10th Division is badly shaken and on the verge of collapse. The Allies have also beefed up some defenses over in India, ones which do not seem to be shaky at the moment. British 14th Army Commander Bill Slim had the entire 5th Division flown in from Arakan a couple weeks ago to reinforce the Dimapur-Imphal area. And since then, all his planes have been flying transport runs to Imphal, like 500 tons of food and supplies a day, which Japanese 15th Army Commander Renya Mutaguchi did not plan for when he planned Operation Ugo. That operation, the invasion of India, is in full swing. There is a lot of pretty confusing fighting around Imphal. Unlike a conventional battle such as Alamein, it consisted of hundreds of chance encounters, dozens of disparate set-piece clashes and hand-to-hand conflicts, frontal attacks, desperate defenses, ambushes, and bombing raids, all of which have been minutely chronicled, but whose details, nevertheless, will probably forever be mysterious. Slim described it as an epic that ran across great stretches of wild country. One day its focal point was a hill named on no map. Next, a miserable, unpronounceable village 100 miles away. Slim looks at the Imphal situation sort of like a wheel, with Imphal at the hub with 6 spokes radiating from it. One is the Imphal-Kohima road to the north. One is the line of the Iril River Valley. One is the track northeast to Ukhrul. One the Tamu road to the southeast, one the Tidim road to the south, and one the Silchar-Bishenpur track to the west. I'm just warning you that though I'll go over the various players and events over the coming weeks, it's still going to be confusing. Anyhow, Japanese 60th Regiment was delayed for a few days by the fighting at Sangshak, but arrives on the Kohima-Imphal Road the 3rd. They are to attack Imphal from the northwest. They make for the supply depot north of Kanglatongbi, the largest in the whole area. The defenders meet them in a defense called the Lion Box. Okay, there are several such boxes around, and what these are are self-sufficient defenses with food and supplies to hold out for 10 days or so, to defend important places like this depot or the airfields. Lion Box has several thousand men there, but few are actual combat troops. Most are admin and support personnel. The Japanese attack it from the 4th to the 7th, even as its evacuation of supplies to Imphal is in progress. The evacuation of everyone is ordered the 7th, and then Sekmai, which has been reinforced by the 63rd Indian Infantry Brigade, becomes the frontline British position on the road. The Japanese also try an assault on the road from Ukhrul the 4th and 5th, but this fails. But the greater developing threat to Imphal is the Japanese 51st Regiment's attacks towards Nunshigum. This massif has a northern and southern hump along a central ridge, and the Japanese begin successful attacks on it the 6th, taking the heights the 7th. Thing is, the Japanese are not just attacking Imphal. They've sent a full division to attack Kohima to the north. Taking Kohima would cut Imphal off from the rest of India and open the door to Dimapur. Dimapur is what the British think the Japanese are aiming for, actually. And so Montague Stopford, commanding 33rd Corps, thinking that the enemy is flanking Kohima en route to Dimapur, pulls Daddy Warren's 161st Brigade back from Kohima the 3rd, leaving behind as defense just 2 companies from the Nepalese Shera Regiment and a couple hundred men from the Assam Rifles. So Stopford has left Kohima nearly defenseless just 1 day before the Japanese attacks on it begin. Yep, the morning of the 4th, after marching 250 kilometers in 20 days over ground the Allies thought it not possible to bring large forces over, elements of the Japanese 58th Regiment begin their attacks on Kohima. When Stopford gets the word, he has the 161st turn around and head back. And on the 5th, 1 battalion manages to rejoin the Kohima garrison, but no more can get through the enemy into the confined space of the Kohima Ridge. When Warren arrived in the area last week, on March 29th, he was shocked to find the ridge had not even been built up as defenses, so the little garrison has dug in however and wherever they can. Warren sets up on a ridge a few kilometers to the west, where his mountain guns can see and fire on Kohima if necessary. The Kohima Ridge was now cut off. Its 1,000 defenders, together with 1,500 non-combatants milling around in confusion and impeding the defenders, squeezed inside the perimeter and were soon surrounded by up to 15,000 eager Japanese. The night of the 6th, the Japanese try a frontal attack, and over the rest of the week, there's a lot of close fighting and a lot of casualties, more of them on the Japanese side. But by now, the siege of isolated Kohima has begun, and the Japanese have even blocked the road to the west near Zubza. The Japanese have another siege going on in Burma. The siege of Napumga against the 2nd Battalion of Merrill's Marauders, though Frank Merrill had a heart attack last week and is not in command at the moment, continues all this week, with the besieged beating off all attacks. But it is anything but pleasant here. As the siege wore on, the profusion of dead flesh, both human and animal, combined with excreta, created almost intolerable conditions. Soldiers half buried their own feces within a few feet of their foxholes. Mules and horses could not take cover. The carcasses of some 100 animals lay in grotesque stages of rigor mortis and decomposition. The men are filling canteens from puddles since water is so scarce, and only get half a canteen per day anyhow. This also seriously limits the care that the wounded can get. Precision supply drops allow them to hold out, though. 1st and 3rd Battalion are trying to fight their way through. The besieged are finally relieved tomorrow, the 9th, by the 3rd Battalion. But this is because Shinichi Tanaka withdraws his Japanese forces when he realizes he cannot destroy the enemy. The 5307th Composite, that's the Marauders' actual name, have pretty much reached the end of any combat effectiveness by now. They've been fighting in the jungle for 3 months, which the US War Department thinks is the maximum time troops can operate there before being relieved. But Allied Commander Vinegar Joe Stilwell does not plan on their relief. In fact, he's got a lot on his mind. That Japanese offensive against Imphal and Kohima could isolate his whole Northern Combat Area Command. He's worried his supply lines are going to be cut off and he'll have to abandon his drive on Myitkyina to send help to Bill Slim's forces in India. Well, on the 3rd, Slim and Stilwell, together with Theater Commander Louis Mountbatten, meet at Jorhat. Stilwell offers to stop his drive and send the 38th Division to help Slim, but Slim declines, which is basically him promising that his 14th Army will stop the Japanese advance and destroy the threat to Stilwell's supply line. Stilwell is like, okay. And so, with Slim tying down all the Japanese in his theater, Stilwell thinks this is the time to take Myitkyina as soon as possible. So he needs every available man, exhausted or no. He is, as are a great many people, unaware that Japan is soon to begin another campaign, a massive, sprawling one designed to unhinge the entire Allied position on the Asian continent. From the first moment of the Pearl Harbor attack, the Japanese had deliberately chosen to fight a perilous two-front war, one against the Western powers in the Pacific and Asian Rim, and the other against the Chinese. Knowing that the tide of war had turned against them in the Pacific, the Japanese High Command decided to turn up the pressure in China, where they enjoyed a qualitative military superiority over their enemies. The Imperial Army's China Expeditionary Force amassed 400,000 soldiers organized into 17 divisions, supported by 12,000 vehicles and 70,000 horses for a massive offensive codenamed Ishigo in East China. The scale of the operation, the largest in Japan's long history, was such that planners earmarked 10,560,000 gallons of gasoline for the vehicles and 2,640,000 gallons of aviation fuel for supporting aircraft. The Japanese intended to seize control of key railroads and airfields, forestall the possibility of American bombing raids on the home islands, establish land links to their bases in French Indochina, and perhaps even weaken Chiang Kai-shek's government badly enough to knock China out of the war. With China neutralized, the Japanese could potentially apportion more resources to fight the Americans in the Pacific and perhaps force them to negotiate a settlement based on Japanese dominance in Asia and a new geopolitical balance of power. This offensive is actually to begin 10 days from now, and it is to go off in stages. Takeshi Hara's numbers are a bit larger than McManus's, by the way. 500,000 troops in 20 divisions, some 80% of the troops available to Japan's China Expeditionary Army, and 100,000 horses. The first stage is the Kaikan or Kogo offensive, and we'll see about a quarter of this force from the North China Area Army try to surround and destroy the Chinese along the Pinghan Railway from Beijing to Hankow. The establishing of an overland corridor to open communications the length of China is one of the missions of the offensive, but the actual Imperial Command sanctioning it is for the destruction of the enemy air bases that threaten the Japanese home islands and Japanese shipping. It is the General Staff that has expanded this to seize the Chinese railroads. The first part of this operation shouldn't see any real logistical issues since the operations are within 100 kilometers of the Japanese bases. More on the planning and thoughts behind this next week. For with the following two notes, this week is over. On the 3rd in the Arctic, British home fleet carriers Victorious, Furious, and 4 escort carriers send Barracuda bombers to attack the German battleship Tirpitz. They lose 4 of their number, but damage Tirpitz enough to ensure she remains out of action for several more months. On the 4th, Charles de Gaulle takes command of the Free French Forces. Well, he takes command of the armed forces. He makes changes in the Committee of National Liberation, appointing 2 communists. Henri Giraud is being sidelined. On the 9th, he will be appointed Inspector General of the Army, and on the 14th, put on the retired list. And that is the week. The Soviets moving into Romania and attacking the Crimea, the Japanese attacking Imphal from various points and laying siege to Kohima, and Japan gearing up for a huge offensive. The largest offensive in Japanese history, with over 500,000 of their troops involved. By comparison, the Battle of Mukden, the largest battle of the Russo-Japanese War 40 years ago, was half of that. This is going to be a surprise. Well, there has been intelligence about this. I mean, you can't entirely hide an operation of this size, and I'll get into that and who believed what and who didn't believe what eventually. But in any and all cases, this is going to surprise the whole world when it goes off. I mean, Japan has been steadily pushed back again and again from her South Pacific Empire, and it seems to the Allies that, well, eventually they'll get to Japan. It might be bloody and brutal, but Japan's lost the war. And then this? Hundreds of thousands of men reigniting the war in China against the most disorganized of the Allied armies. Where did all of this come from? What if Japan takes all of China? That would really change the entire face of the war. All those resources and all that land to attack from and to use against the Allies. A real stronghold, maybe. Wow. Just when you thought you knew the big picture, it's like if there was a great white shark terrorizing a beach, and then it wasn't for a while, and then just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water. Hey, in under 2 months, our 24-hour coverage of the first day of the Allied invasion of Normandy, Operation Neptune, often referred to as D-Day, sees the light of day. It will be released on June 6th, actually, and while it will be released here, it will not be released here as 24-hourly episodes or anything like that, since we don't want to clutter up our videos list any more than we have to. So just one long one. However, we have set up a D-Day 24-hour channel where you can watch it piece by piece, or beach by beach, or just the airborne, or all in a row, hour by hour. Your choice. The link will be right here any second now, and you better go and subscribe so you do not miss that. It is thanks to the Time Ghost Army that we can even do such a mammoth undertaking. So help us keep doing this stuff by joining the Army at timeghost.tv or patreon.com. These are the newest commissioned officers in the Army, and Sarah Douglas is the Army Member of the Week. Go, Sarah! See you next time.